Eccoci, benvenuti. Innanzitutto una domanda, chi ha già partecipato a un appuntamento della Social Media Week questa settimana? Alzi la mano per favore. Oh, tanti, benissimo. Adesso parleremo di Viaggio, il centro delle conversazioni online, dagli insight alla strategia d'azione, ovvero martedì si è parlato di analytics, di come è importante per il marketing, quali siano i dati che vogliamo raccogliere, ma oggi parleremo più di qual è il viaggio, il racconto e come questo poi ha un effetto quando le aziende disegnano e poi attuano le loro strategie. Per introdurre l'ospite di stasera abbiamo invitato a Carla Aid. Carla è the Head of Market Engagement di Nokia con sede a Londra, in UK. Alla fine dell'intervento di Carla e di Madlen avremo spazio alle domande. Se volete farle in inglese direttamente non c'è nessun problema, ci saranno dei microfoni, invece se le volete fare in italiano non c'è nessun problema, io sarò qua in prima fila e farò le traduzioni in diretta. Without more ado, Carla, welcome to Social Media Week Milan.
Okay, good evening everyone, and thank you to everybody who's tweeted to me today when I arrived at Malpensa and said, oh God, it's snowing. that was Milan welcoming me for the first time. I'm very proud to be here. I just came from Social Media Week Lagos. It was 33 degrees over there, guys. So I'm feeling the cold right now, but very, very happy to be here. As Gianfranco said, I am the head of market engagement, but it sounds quite complicated, so I'll just let you know what that means. I work in the global social media team for Nokia, and we're based in London, in Paddington. And what I do, my role is to be the advocate and the voice for the markets. I work with people like Alessandro, who is in charge of digital here for Nokia Italia. I work with all of the cities in Asia, in the US, I work with the heads of marketing, and I make sure that whatever they're doing there in social and digital is also represented at global. And we take all of that input into our strategy. So that's what the market engagement part is all about. But my role, what I do, is all about social media. And one of the great things that I do as well is I run Nokia's participation in Social Media Week. So we are the global headline sponsor for the 3rd year running. And I've been running this project since September with all of the cities. And we each time we pick about 5 to 6 cities out of the 12, purely because we can't be in 12 cities based on resource and many things. So this time, out of the 5 cities, Milan was one of them, Lagos, New York, Copenhagen, and Hamburg. And my role is basically to work and engage with all of the local cities to make sure that we get you guys fun stuff, cool stuff to do during Social Media Week, to let you know all about the great things that are happening at Nokia, our products, innovation, the services, and the people. At the end of the day, Social Media Week is all about the people. It's one of the very few events in the world that allows brands like us and companies to talk and to listen to what you guys are saying. And this is the great opportunity that I take from all of this. What we're doing, just in a nutshell, in Social Media Week is we try to focus on many activities around design, around social media innovation, around music. So it's not just about technology and the product, it's about everything that falls around that. We also really focus on social media innovation and thought leadership. So we put a lot of our people, Nokia people, on panels, on speaking opportunities, so you guys get the chance to talk to us, to tell us your feedback, your comments, to ask us questions, and we listen. It's not just about us talking right back at you. And I've been to many events across the globe, and I've never seen an event like that. So this is why Nokia's partnership with Social Media Week is so close. We always want to be working with them in order to make sure each year gets bigger and bolder. Now, our panel and basically our speaking today is going to be about social listening, and social listening in terms of how do we take the insights and action them. And I'm sure many of you here know what social listening is about. Maybe your brand or your company is already using that. I mean, that's a big, high five to you guys if you're doing that. The second stage would be to be using social listening in order to shape your social media strategy. That is one of the greatest things that you can do if you already have a monitoring or a listening tool. Also, I think one thing to also look into is are we taking those insights and are we making sure that they follow our KPIs and our objectives? So we can go to a company or you know, get a tool for listening and monitoring, but do we actually know what we are monitoring? Do we have KPIs? Do we have objectives? Do we know how many teams inside the company are also involved? So social listening is not just about marketing. Social listening is about every single team in that company, because you are listening to what, you know, your consumers or maybe potential consumers, detractors saying about you out there. You need to be listening to all of these conversations there and making the consumer part of your organization, making the consumer lead your strategy. And the one way of doing that is listening to all the online conversations out there about your products, about your services, about what your competitors are being talked about as well. So it doesn't limit anything. But then you get so much data. And there's this, you know, words that fly everywhere, which is big data, big data. And I think we need to look at the right data, not big data. That's something that I always say when I'm talking about social listening. It's not just about getting lots and lots of numbers and lots of reports that we send to each other in the company and we say, hey, you know, we're listening, so look at these great reports that we've got. And Nokia uses Radian 6. And we are right now, for example, for Social Media Week across the 5 cities, we are listening to what people think of the events, what they think of Nokia, what they think of all the cool stuff that's going on. And what I do when I come back from this is not just look at them and go, hey, people think we're great. Great sentiment, you know, and clap for myself and all the cities. What we do is we see what people like and don't like, what we can improve. I can share it with other teams, share it with care, share it with sales, share it with our senior management, which is where really the actions do come in. Make sure that everything, that all the insights that are there are things that I'm going to act on with my team and with the rest of the teams to make the next event that we do for you even better. And another thing that we do is we talk to a lot of, you know, people who advocate Nokia. So there's a lot of people that have never talked to us before, and through Social Media Week have reached out to us and said, hey, it's the first time I've bought a Lumia and I love it. And we reach out to them. There are people that say, we don't like Nokia and, you know, F off. And we also reach out to them and say, okay, guys, you know, what don't you like? What can we do to help? Would you like to try one of our new devices? Let's see what you think. So you're not just engaging with people who love you. You're engaging with everybody out there, and you're sharing this information and all of these insights and making it the right data and making it actionable for you. And you're going to hear the word actionable a lot, but all it means is that you are getting value and return on investment from the money you are spending on your listening tools. Otherwise, it could be just, you know, another 100,000 euros, 10,000 euros thrown down the drain, impress people for a while with the great reports, and then nothing much happens. So that's where Madlen Nicolaus comes in right now. She'll be going a lot deeper into this than I've just touched on it myself. And Madlen works at Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And she's been there for a year already. And what she's going to be doing is going a lot deeper into this, what your company can do, what you can do, how she can help you also advocate social listening in your company. I'm sure many of you believe in it and know the value of it, but maybe your senior management don't, or the rest of your teams don't, or they don't see the value of spreading all of this insights and actions to the rest of the teams. They think it's just marketing that should be doing this, and that's not right. Marketing might own the relationship, but marketing are not the only people that are responsible for the social listening. It involves everyone. So without further ado, Madlen, take the stage.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Can everybody hear me? I will try to speak a bit slowly, but yeah, let me know if you need further explanation of something, or if I need to go a bit more deeper at the end into something. So as explained, I'm working at Salesforce, and there specifically at the Marketing Cloud product division. And what I will do in the next couple of minutes is really explain a little bit on the example of myself and my journey from my previous role to what I'm doing now, kind of the journey into listening and where it's actually going. Because as mentioned already, it doesn't really stop just by creating some interesting reports, but really how this can be used inside the organization and what tools are available that can help you action all that data that you can get because people are sharing on social channels. Firstly, I always have to show that slide. Salesforce is a public traded company, and we always have to make you aware that anything we or I show you now will not affect in any way if you buy our stock or not. You can find the details of that online as well. So let's start. Today, as many of you all know, we all living in the age of transparency, where customers, they share everything. They talk about themselves, they talk about their friends, and by doing that, they give brands access to their friends, to their interests, and also their friends' interests. And most importantly, they also share about their use of products, what they like, what they don't like about products and services. And this is the very valuable part of all of that. And yeah, you can probably see it from yourself as well, that you're probably telling people the restaurants you visit or the food you have eaten and what you've liked, the holiday destinations you go to, things like that. The challenge that we're facing today is that marketers and also, as mentioned before, whole organizations, they have access to so much data, as much data as never before, because there is this constant sharing, and it's kind of has been building up over past years since we're using social media more and more. And the real question is, how can we turn all this data and get those pieces out of it that we can actually use for the different departments in an organization? So if somebody, expresses a need, how can we use that? For example, for customer service, or if somebody expresses excitement or an interest for something, how can we maybe use that for marketing? Or people will give feedback about how they use products and services, and you can use that for R&D. So people sharing all this information, but the question now for brands is, okay, thank you guys, you're talking about all of that, you're giving us that information, but what's actually the value that we can provide as a brand in return? And that's where it all starts, with listening. And yeah, we always say that when you work in social media, when you start with a social media strategy, when you start with any marketing strategy, or also in an organization, everything starts with listening. And I would like to quote a colleague of mine, Luca Benini. He's actually Italian. He would have made maybe a better job in speaking to you in your language. But he always, when he does a speaking engagement, he always quotes his mom, that she always taught him since he was little, there is a reason why you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, because you have to listen first and then only speak kind of half as much as you listen. And I always find that very, very beautiful. And because he started sharing kind of this background, how he has been taught when he was little, I also thought about my background, and I actually realized that I learned listening very, very early in my life, because I have been born in the former GDR in Germany. You might hear that I'm not native English speaking. And I don't know if you know, but at that time, it was a communist country and products were not always available, and you actually learned from early on, you always had to listen because you needed to know where certain things were available or who had access to things. And then what happened was really people would buy large amounts of something when it was available, and then they would trade with others, but you needed to know where and who had access to what. So listening was really, really important. And yeah, this is really what we did. We had to queue, and it's always a big joke that everybody does, that we had to queue for bananas, but it actually was a matter of fact, and you needed to know where you could get them. Well, and then I worked for quite some time at Eastman Kodak, and this was a company that started using social media really, really early, and we also used listening very early. And at that time, I already used Radian 6 as monitoring solution. So I have experience with that tool since many years. And what we used to measure at Kodak was, for once, we looked at what is the brand recognition. We looked at brand loyalty and evangelists. So we really analyzed the online conversation and looked, okay, who are our advocates? Who are influential people who talk about our brand, who we should involve, who we can ask for their opinion, and who help us share our messages. We also already used it for customer service, to resolve issues, and we also used it for research and development. So I don't know if you remember, it's now already a few years back, but the pocket video cameras that Kodak had, they were all developed and enhanced by customer feedback. So every new product version had details that the customers actually requested, and that information we got at that time through social channels. But it was still, when we did that, yes, we had Radian 6 as a tool. We even had the first chief listener, we called it, so really one person who was dedicated to social media listening and analytics, and who would create reports and dashboards for the different departments and help route the conversations. But not every organization has access to a person like such a chief listener, and still you need to find out of all that information the relevant data for different departments, like marketing, but also the service department, the research and development, or also HR, recruitment. You can find good candidates through social media, but you have to find that data. You have to understand what customers want, what are they interested in, and how can you, with the services, make their life better. And this is now an example of how much insights actually just one tweet can provide. So this is, it's quite a bit old. It's from August 2011, but it's a great example that I like to use. Chris saying, "I'm loving the Apple keynote today. Totally want to get the new iPad. When is it coming out?" So if we look at a sentence like that, it's a short tweet, less than 140 characters. You can see for once that this person is excited about it, that it has positive sentiment, advocacy towards that brand. You can find a company mention. You can see that they actually want something, that they have a need and an intent to buy, an emotion. And they're also actually asking a question that could be directed at the customer support and that a brand can act upon. So if things like that happen, or if somebody, I'm coming to Milan and I'm checking in my hotel and I'm saying, "Oh, just getting here, does anybody have a restaurant recommendation?" Things like that. So companies can find those insights just through tweets and can really show that they are listening and respond to that and use it also for their different departments. Yeah, and the product mention as well, I forgot. And so this is very important to see, because this is just on the example of a tweet, but imagine a blog post or video content or more extensive content that consumers are sharing online. What we have seen, though, in various companies is that often there is a listening solution maybe in place, but there are problems. How is actually this information that you get routed then to the different departments? Oftentimes what we still find is that different departments using different tools, there are external agencies that using different tools, and then the information is not really delivered to the right people, and so there are only limited insights that you can get from it. And that was the reason why Salesforce actually combined Radian 6, the social media listening platform, with Buddy Media, the leading social media marketing platform, because now they wanted to help companies to have basically a unified solution where you can combine the listening, all the insights you get from social channels, from the conversations that consumers are having, and how you then immediately can action them, can automate things, can direct them to the right departments in an organization. And this now shows basically the 6 elements of the Marketing Cloud. So it's a combination of a listening solution where you can scan the web, a combination of a tool to create social content, an engagement solution, a tool to create social media ads, workflow and automation, and then also measurement. And I will talk you through those elements and how they can be used now in the next couple of minutes, and then at the end give you 2 examples how this can be used in practice by a company or potentially by your company. So the first element is the listening, and that is the former Radian 6 product. And what is important to know is really that we scan more than 570 million sources. So there's large amounts of data that is scanned, so it's really important that a listening tool has a broad coverage. What's also important, and you will probably agree, that we cover 19 languages, so Italian is one of them, which is very, very important, and we trying to add new languages on an ongoing basis. What is also very helpful for companies is that our data pool goes actually back to May 2008. So our users can request historical data, and so you can even compare on a year-to-year basis how has the conversation changed, how did the share of voice compared to competitors change, and things like that. And they are also constantly, of course, because the social web and the online world is constantly changing, we're also always adding new sources. So that kind of builds the basis, because you need this listening tool first to get those insights, to find out who's talking about my product, about my service, and then to be able to do an action based on what you find. So the second element is then a tool to create content, and this is actually, it's really amazing. So this is the former Buddy Media tool. It's a very simple tool how you can create, let's say, tabs for Facebook or any content that you publish on microsites or on YouTube, on LinkedIn. And what it really helps is that if there is a company that maybe has offices in different locations, or you work together with an agency and you do parts in-house, with that tool you can create content, and then it's kind of stored in a library. And from there, it can be accessed from anyone else from your team. So you only have to create it once and can then deploy it, and it can be used in different languages, in different locations. And you can always reuse assets and content that you have created and make sure that you represent the brand everywhere in a similar way. The third element is the engagement tool. And has anybody used Radian 6 before here? So you know maybe our engagement console, and this is now combined with the Buddy Media engagement tool, where you can also schedule posts. So the advantage is you have basically one interface where all the conversations that are happening are rooted in, and you can reply and comment from that one interface. You can work in real time with different team members. So you see, for example, when your colleague from customer service is already answering a post, or you can, in between the team members who are working together, you can have comments to different posts and can say, okay, I can actually not answer this. Can you please take care of that? Things like that. So it's really, it saves a lot of time because you only have to use that one interface. I usually, in my daily work, I always have like an additional screen where I have the engagement console open. And so I always see what is said about our brand, if users have questions, and I can work with our team together to resolve them. Another element is a tool to create social media ads. So it's really with our Marketing Cloud tool, you can basically from that interface create advertisement for Facebook, for YouTube, without having to leave it. And I don't know, has anybody heard the Twitter news that has been announced yesterday? Yeah, so it's also a part of our tool now. We're one of the first partners of Twitter. So they just introduced a social ads platform, because beforehand, if you wanted to do any advertisements on Twitter, you had to do that by hand, and it wasn't really scalable. So now it's part of our solution as well, that you can scale and run Twitter advertisements. So if you want to know any more details, we also, there were quite a few posts online, but I can direct you to the website where you can find more information. And then another important part of this solution, and this is what I also mentioned earlier, is that aspect to automate things and to align different departments in the organization. So part of our tool helps create rules and automation engines that, for example, every time somebody says I want, or I need, or I have a problem, or for example you could choose the fail hashtag or something, that you can automate that and direct all those conversations directly to the customer service so they can answer that. You can also automate things that you see every time somebody expresses that they are interested in a service or in a product, that you create a contact in your CRM system so that the sales team can follow up with it, or if there are details about products, that you route that to product development, etc. So this is really very powerful, because often in organizations the capacity of the social media teams are limited, and that way you can automate things and you can make sure that those pieces of content that need action, that they really get very, very quickly to the right people. And last but not least, and that's also really, really interesting, is a comprehensive measurement tool that combines then everything. So with that tool you see the data that you get from the listening tool, what is actually said about us on the open web, plus all results and KPIs from the different content pieces that have been created on the different channels, from any advertisements that you maybe have used. So it's all combined in one dashboard, and you can even see how many click-through rates you got, or how many people purchased something. Because part of our tool is also, and I didn't mention that earlier, but it's, you know, probably those share buttons, usually with Share This or something, that you have articles or products online that are directly kind of have underneath the share buttons for Facebook, for Twitter. And we have part of that as well as part of our tool, as the technology for that. So we can track up to 30 days after somebody liked something or tweeted about something, what happened then? Did they visit our website? Did they purchase the product? Did they download something? So it's really very comprehensive, the insights you can get. And from all of that, what this really helps to have that as a combined solution, and at the moment it is not single sign-on yet. At the moment it is, you have to log into Radiant 6 and into Buddy Media separately, but our product development team is working very, very hard on combining this into one tool. But what it really means for companies and for organizations is that you can follow those 3 R's that I find very, very important for any social media marketing activity, for any social media engagement that you do, that are the key pillars. Because recognition is very, very important, because no one feels special if they don't feel heard. So you have to recognize when customers talk about you, when they have a question or maybe a problem. You need to respond to that. Then relevance is very important, because we go to the fact now that everybody is sharing, let's say, which restaurants they have visited, which dishes they have eaten. And imagine then you go the next week into the restaurant and you greeted by the owner already, and he knows your favorite dish or your favorite drink. Makes you feel very, very special, and you probably very much likely to come back to that again. Or imagine you go to your favorite store and they already know what your favorite brand is or what your favorite color is, and they can address that. And imagine the other way around, if you a regular visitor and then they show you and tell you something that is completely against your interest. So it's very, very important relevance, and because we have all this data now available, companies have the ability to be relevant with their communications, with their marketing activities. And then the last one is responsiveness, to really respond in a timely manner. And one example of a company who does it really well is actually KLM. And it's an interesting story how they got to that point, because it was in fact the ash cloud, if you remember, in spring 2010, when the whole of Europe, all the air traffic stopped because of the ash cloud. And that was when KLM really realized, oh my God, we have to help our customers and help them get information of alternative travel. How do we get them from A to B? And that's when they started implementing an extensive listening tool and combining that with the Salesforce Service Cloud actually, and also they're using the social hub to automate things. And in the past 2 years, what they have achieved is really, they have now 1-hour response rates to any questions or any queries people have, because they're constantly filtering the web and looking for any questions that anybody asks. And they have also achieved a 24-hour resolution time. And it's really, it's a great example of how a company has transformed itself into a socially driven, consumer-led business. And the last example that I want to show you, because I talked a lot about content creation, it's the Body Shop. And I think this is a very powerful example of how listening can be combined with content creation. Because in that case, Body Shop, as you know, they're always introducing sometimes new products, new product categories, and what they have done in the past was they introduced hemp products. And they would have never thought that this could be a hit and that consumers could be very interested in that. But what they found through their listening tool, but also through monitoring very in detail how many shares their products get, how many comments, how many people recommend products to others. So they have found their hemp products are a very, very big hit. So people were recommending them to one another, they were talking about it online. So they looked at the details in the analytics tool. I mean, this is just an example, but they could see increased sales in that, so they really could see an increased demand for that specific product category. And so what they have done is, accordingly, they created a large amount of content, so that not only Facebook tabs or little advertisement, but they really, all the content that performed very, very well, they amplified that additionally through advertisements. They introduced even additional products because they saw that it was so popular. And they increased their sales as a result by 31%, and their visits to their online page by more than 70%. So that was really significant, and it's a great example to see really why it is important also from a business perspective to listen to what customers are saying and how you can use that for improving the product offering. And yeah, I'm already at the end, and would be happy to take any questions now. And maybe I sit down for that.
Let me start with the first one for both of you. So we are seeing companies doing all of this listening. You have amazing tools like Radiant 6. I wonder, since the moment a company jumps and adopts one of these platforms, what's the learning curve? You know, where do you learn how to read these things and how to act? So both from the company that sells the tool to a company that's using it. So what's the road you have to take in order to use these tools effectively?
Okay, I'll take the brand point of view. I actually took that road in my previous role at Nokia, which was, can you guys hear me well? Is that coming clear? Yeah? And I was working for Nokia in Middle East and Africa in Dubai, so I was heading social media there. And I introduced, it was called Socializer there, because we have Arabic as one of the languages, and at the time, Radiant 6 weren't covering that. And we had to go through this whole process you're talking about, which was A, convincing senior management why they should invest in the tool, although it was, I think it was around $12,000 a month, which seems like a lot of money in terms of 12,000, but if you think of the return that you get, I mean, people are spending between 10,000 to 150,000 euros on their website. Nobody blinks. $12,000 to listen to what people are saying about you, as Madlen was saying, to actually know where your social media strategy should be going. So that was my first obstacle. How do I get the budget to do this? Because it wasn't planned for. That was done, we got that. How do I convince the teams internally as well to help me to come up with the KPIs and objectives? It wasn't just me going, okay, this is what I want to achieve from the tool. It's Nokia, Middle East and Africa, who had to achieve things in the tool. So what were the KPIs? What were the objectives? What do care want to achieve? What do comms want to achieve? What do HR want to achieve? We want to hire people. We want to listen to who are people who want to work for us, who are the people who have different experiences that work for the roles. So I spent time with each one of those. And it does take time, guys, so don't think this is an easy win if you haven't done it yet. You need to spend time, lots of TLC. You need to have some figures and facts of companies that have done it and have done it well. Companies like this, companies like Nokia. And after that, I think the final challenge was, how do I take the reports that look very nice and pretty from people just looking at them and going, oh, great, so 90% sentiment for that campaign. That is really good. Okay, fantastic, Carla, thank you very much. It was more like, okay, what do we do about it? How can we make, not just look at the sentiment, but how can we look at the different conversations that we're getting? How can we look at what people are saying about our competitors versus our brand? Even if we're doing well, how can we improve even better? How can we pick out all these great guys that are tweeting about us and include them into our advocacy program? So this takes time, and people are busy. Everyone is really, really busy. So how do you convince them to dedicate time on their daily or weekly job to take this forward? And how do you do that is basically start doing it yourself and show them how these insights have turned into actions, and what you're able to achieve in terms of, you know, I've just hired, let's say, 10 advocates over 1 week for the advocacy program by using the listening tool. No extra budget was involved because we're already paying for this. And these 10 advocates have created this number of conversations for us. These 10 advocates are now testing Nokia devices, and they're sharing it on their blogs, they're sharing it with a bigger community. I've taken this detractor who said, you know, I can't stand Nokia right now, and now he's going, I think you guys are pretty cool. You know what? We'll try your products next time. The value of that cannot be measured. The value of these kind of people like yourselves saying these things and being converted, people trying out our products and speaking about them. And that is how you convince them. It's not just about banging your head on the wall, it's about showing results. And that's the only way you can move your company. So for me, these were the challenges, and this is what we had to go past. I hope that answers the question. Any other questions? We were so good that nobody has anything. Oh, good.
I have a question concerning listening again, and in particular, I'd like to know more about the precision with which this listening occurs, because I come from a scientific research background, and I've seen that Radiant 6 and other similar software types, they tend to kind of automatically select and categorize specific inputs, and then these inputs are conveyed into a result, but what is more relevant usually is what is contained in comments that can be ironic or sarcastic or very difficult to interpret, very kind of the border between what's good and bad is very thin, and it's difficult to understand what exactly they mean. So I wonder what you do to make sure that, that what you listen to is correct. And if you have any kind of human intervention, scanning or skimming the things that you listen to and evaluating those more correctly than the software does. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I take it. So there is the software element where you can automate parts of that, but then there's always has to be the human element. So even what we trying to help, because of that massive amount of data, to automate parts of it, but that's still directed to a person. And this person then has to judge and see, you know, what is the correct way of actioning that data. When it comes to creating reports, for example, or just general analysis, if you want as a brand to see from last month to this month how our sentiment changed, it's always recommended to really have someone who can dedicate some time to that. So yes, there is no tool, and there is automated sentiment in our tool where you can see nuances and where you can see it's positive, it's negative, or somewhat positive, but you do need a person that has some time to actually go through that and to analyze the details. Yeah, that is always in there. There is not really a solution yet until we have semantic search, I guess. Until we have that all figured out, it's always important to have that human element. But what we try is really to save time so that you don't have to, as the user, have to look at all the data, that you have some previous filtering that finds you the relevant points of it.
I just want to add to that. That's a really, really good question. And this is something that we suffered with as well, specifically when we're talking different languages. You know, we had Arabic, we had Persian, we had Urdu, and obviously I don't speak all of those. I wish, but I don't. So what we had to do was optimize as we go along. You start off with something, as you do in everything in marketing. You never have the perfect solution. And you just keep optimizing. So you change the words and you play around with them a little bit. One thing we struggled with is, how do you define a negative or a positive comment? Sometimes it doesn't fall under either. So we had to identify those in the tool, and maybe even say to Socializer, who were doing the reports for us, and the people who were tracking, if a comment has these words in it, please don't put it in positive or negative. Just leave it as something that is a conversation. So you need to make those decisions yourself, and just keep looking at the reports, keep looking at the data, and be very confident in terms of, you know your brand best, you know what works for them, and what are you trying to identify. So just keep minimizing, optimizing as you go along, and eventually that human element will add a lot of value for you. But I mean, Madlen is correct. There is no tool right now that can do all of this for us, and this is why the convincing part for all the teams and the senior management is so crucial, because you're going to need all of those guys to help you come up with these things. There will be comments that are care related, and you won't know yourself whether, if you work in marketing, whether is this a negative or positive, is this a comment that is, you know, as you said, sarcastic, or how do I take this comment? So you need to go to those teams and say, hey guys, what do you think of this? And I think involving them in that is going to help you as well make better decisions. But you're never going to have it perfect, but it's better than nothing, really. It's definitely going to add a lot of value for you, even with all of these kind of little issues there.
Yeah, and also a part of the tools are those workflow elements. So you, for example, when you use the engagement tool, you can, for every conversation that is happening, you can give the post a tag. You can give it a tag for a person, or for a post tag, so that you also kind of, the longer you do it, you filter through, and you can kind of add more details to the data. So you see, maybe one time somebody complained, and then you look at that person and you see, oh wow, he actually has a quite large following, we should watch him. So you give him a tag, for example, I don't know, detractor, or however you want to call it, and then every time this person would comment again, it would be, you know, you would see that, oh, we have interacted with him, or he had a problem before, pay attention to that. So it's kind of, it's built itself over time, but it helps to have the tools that help you kind of sort it a little bit better.
I have another question, Madlen. So when we first met, you were at Kodak back in 2009. You were using Redin 6. Now you work for Redin 6. What did you wish you knew back then, or if you moved to a company again using tool, what did you know you wished as a brand using this tool that you know now because you are inside the product?
Well, there's a lot, because the way we handled it at Kodak, and I think that wasn't the perfect way, was we had a chief listener. So you had a specific person or a department, you also had assistants who would do the analysis. So me as a social media manager, I would never sit in the tool and be able to actually, for my country or for my campaign, to drill in. We would get monthly reports that look at campaigns or that look at our overall brand mentions, but we didn't really have the direct access to the tool, and that limited a little bit the way how I could use it, because it was someone else filtering it for me. And the more advanced the tools get, the more simpler they get. Because I mean, we even, thankfully now we have Salesforce who kind of combining it with other tools, who working really hard to make it even more simple, because it's not, it's not as straightforward. You can't just sit there and start using a listening tool immediately. You have to always have a bit of a learning curve. And yeah, I think if I back then could have done it myself in parts and would have had more access, we could have done things better. And also there is always a delay if you have someone else doing the analysis. And during crisis, I mean, we had the Chapter 11 announcement at that point where there was a lot of negative online conversation going on, things like that, where definitely, yeah, I think we should have done it directly through the people. And that's why also now, to your question, who helps at the very beginning? So for us, when we have customers, we have a customer success team. So we really have dedicated people, and also a professional services team who helps companies at the beginning. How do you set up a topic profile? How do you fine-tune your search? How do you really optimize it so your organization can do it in the best possible way? They do the trainings and all of that. So it's important, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I would like to know, how do you provide different content for different people? Because I suppose for Nokia you have early adopters that are really focused on technology, and then maybe consumers that are not, maybe on just services. So how do you provide different content to these people?
Okay, so you're asking how do we provide content to the users, not this content to people at Nokia. So it's to the early adopters and to via social media. Okay, so one part obviously is, we listen to identify who these early adopters are, who these advocates are, who the detractors are. And we serve different content, but at the end of the day, I think, we have a content management tool. We plan the content globally, and we do share a lot of it with the markets. But there's always a human element and a personal element to that. So with the early adopters, I think you need to have that personal relationship at the beginning with them to understand, where are they at in the stage of their mobile usage. We tend to have that a lot with our markets, for example, in Africa, where they've not maybe used a smartphone before. They've used quite basic phones, and they're switching to maybe a lower-end smartphone or to a high-end smartphone. And we try to build that journey with them by maybe letting them test one of our devices to get comfortable with the device. So, we get them into our trial program, and we kind of, get them try the device. What do you think of the device? And we serve different, posts and tweets on our, Facebook, Nokia Facebook pages. But a lot of these are done through the markets as well. So the markets own the relationships on the ground. So if we identify an early adopter at, the global level, we do make sure that we share that content with whoever is in the Nokia team in the city. So that's one way of doing it. We serve specific content to them. We introduce, so maybe we can give them, we introduce some of the KSPs of the device. We try to give them, we send them to videos where they can see how they can use these different phones, and then trialing it. It's always really good to have a product, whether it's a phone or anything else that you haven't tried before, for a few weeks to get comfortable with it, rather than spending that money on it yourself and not being sure. With the advocates, it's a long-term relationship. We build the relationship closely. We have a Nokia Global Advocacy Program, but a lot of that stuff is also done on the local level, because that's where you get the face-to-face. So people like Alessandro would be leading the advocacy program here with comms. So we work marketing and comms together. We identify who are the people maybe that are more on the maybe journalists or people who work in the PR, and then the advocates who, as you said, are hardcore techies who probably know information before even we do. So some of them are the big Nokia advocates who've been with us from day one since we existed, and they're with us all along, and they would be out there and they would sometimes speak on behalf of the company. And I think what's important with that is not forgetting about them. So it's not so much just about sending content to them. That's really important in terms of we share what we can with them, and we make them feel like, they're learning this information first as well. But we try to listen to them, and when they give us feedback, if they say, you guys have launched this device, and honestly, I'm not so sure, for example, or I've tried this app, can you reach out to the people who created it? And let them know this and this and this. So we pick up on it and we action it immediately. And we do that through the social listening, but sometimes they contact us directly. I've got people that I've never met, I have to say, in India, and people in Spain. There's Joao in Spain, if he's watching. Hey, Joao. He's tweeting me. I've never met him. He asks me if I'm at MWC. He asks me which events I'm at Social Media Week. He follows me on Twitter. And sometimes he tells me things. He goes to DM on Twitter and he says, hey, I'm trying to get to MWC, or I'm trying to get to this event at my city, or can you tell me who the contact is in Nokia Spain? And I know not everyone at Nokia can do that. People are busy, people are not as active, but the people who are responsible for those relationships keep picking up that information. So to answer your question, it's not so much necessarily always about the content. That's really important, and we manage it through specific teams, and we make sure that global and local, we're driving important information based on the audience we're identifying. But a really strong element is keeping the personal relationships with those guys based on what stage they're at, what device they're buying. The early adopters, the people who love us, all of them are just as important, and we try to make sure that we get them as involved as possible. We've invited a lot of the people who we picked up on Twitter and people of our advocates to Social Media Week opening and closing parties. VIP tickets to attend, maybe in New York or in Milan, etc. So we keep that relationship going through constantly staying in touch and constantly engaging with them. Does that answer the question?
And if I can add to that, so this element of getting the right type of content to the right people, that's why it makes sense to combine this listening solution with Buddy Media, with the content creation tool. Because with that, what you can do is you can create targeted content for different audiences. So because you have those pre-prepared assets that you can choose from, so you can choose between 55 different assets. It can be from polls to product pages to you show video or whatever, the different content types that from Facebook, for example, on those tabs. And you can really create different versions of that and then combine it with very targeted advertisement, so that you say, okay, this is a specific tab we created for the age group of 15 to 25-year-old that has content that is exactly addressing their needs, and I show the ads only to those. And then you do a different one for different target groups. So that's how you can now combine it with having a content tool and this social advertisement tool at the same time, where you can automate and do all the social ads out of that one platform. And the advantage is really that by having it all in one tool, you see in the measurement element at the end, did it work out? Did we get those click-through rates? You can automate even things that you say, if content didn't perform, then let's stop that, or let's change that a little bit and let's try it in a different way. So because you always at the same time kind of listening to how this is performing as well, not only listen what's happening on the open web, you can then be much more targeted and have the right content for the right people on on the right channel that they are using at the right time when it's relevant for them. So that's again those 3 R's basically.
I just remembered one thing. In the last few weeks we've been using like a tool called Tweet Sender. And this is only for Twitter, obviously, but it's usually very difficult for a brand to identify early adopters and techies and all the different audiences that follow you on Twitter, because it's not as personal sometimes as Facebook. You don't get to find as much information. And what Tweet Sender is, it gives us permission. We contact the guys that are following us and say, we want to serve you information that is relevant to you or that is interesting to you. And that would go to their DM. So they'd be following us, we'd be following them. And you know, they might say, you know what, I only want information on technology, or I only want information on music, when you know, the Nokia Music Mix Radio on your entertainment. So I actually wanted to use it when we did Social Media Week, and I spoke to the person on my team, and you know, we can identify we can identify by city, no, I don't think by city, by country. We can identify by country, and we can identify by device. So how many people are using Lumias, and are they in the US? And from that, we also go, are they interested in hearing about, you know, Nokia's social media? And then we can send them a tweet about that. So what that does is it kind of serves you the right content at the right time. And more importantly than content, I think, is context. You know, that's exactly it. You know, I think a lot of people talk about content, and I think that is very important, of course. But I think it's about content. It's serving the right information to the right people at the right time as well. And I think Tweet Sender has been, you know, I think we were the first to use that, and it went in the press releases and Engadget and a few articles. And it's working really well, because people feel, look, if I don't want to hear about this, I don't need to, you know, I don't get it from Nokia. And if I do, they will send me a DM and it'll be there waiting for me. So that's, I mean, there are lots of different ways, but for Twitter, that really worked for us.
Yeah, and that's also what Twitter just announced yesterday, basically, that they now will have a professional ad platform where you can also create Twitter advertisement very, very targeted. So that will be very interesting for companies to use as well. So I think it's from every end. There are the service providers that are trying to help more and more, you know, provide the right tools to be able to do that, to be more relevant, and to tailor content much, much better. And it's the same that the social media platforms themselves are working on allowing that much, much more, because they are interested in making the brands that advertise on their channels, also making them successful. So, yeah.
So, se non ci sono altre domande, I would like to thank you very much, Madlen, Carla, for sharing your insights and experience. E noi ci vediamo dopo alle 7 per l'incontro con i fumetti e i social media. Grazie, a dopo.